Welcome to Politically Georgia from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I'm Greg Bluestein. Scott James Matheson is not the most obvious Republican to cross party lines. He's the mayor of Valdosta, a conservative radio host and a self-described hardcore conservative from a county that Donald Trump carried comfortably in 2024. But this November, Matheson is backing Democratic U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff over Republican nominee Mike Collins. Matheson says it's not because he's abandoned his conservative beliefs, far from it. It's because Ossoff showed up for Valdosta, delivered federal help, and built a relationship that Matheson says he simply can't turn his back on. So how does a conservative Republican get to the point where he's willing to take heat from his own party to help reelect a Democrat? The mayor now joins us on Politically Georgia. Hey, Mayor.
Greg, how you doing?
Good. Let's start at that decision, because you told me in our interview, you said, I quote, "I will take heat for this endorsement and it doesn't matter." So when did you actually decide, I'm going to endorse Jon Ossoff?
Over a 6-year period of time. It didn't have to be an ask. If he had some grand scheme or plan, then he executed it over 6 years, because he has been fantastic for the city that I represent. And remember, I'm a minority city of 60,000 down here. And yes, as far as the city and the county, it still does go at least politically right. So, and listen, Donald Trump's been a fantastic friend to the city of Valdosta. He's been down here many times in the first election cycle and second and during the hurricanes. But the level of service, the level of love that the senator has showed us is just next level. It really is.
So, Mayor, I got a lot of feedback from that story from people saying, including members of elected office, who said, okay, but he's not really.
You too?
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about yours, but they said, look, he's not really a Republican because he's a nonpartisan mayor's race. And I went back to them and said, essentially, did you really call Keisha Lance Bottoms a nonpartisan mayor when she was mayor of Atlanta? Of course not. You called her a Democrat.
No.
And you describe yourself as a Republican. So even though the office is nonpartisan, everyone in your city, in your county, really in grassroots Republican politics knows you're a Republican.
So I'll give you an even stranger thing that I had to go through, very uncomfortable thing for about 45 days, probably a year into my first term, into my first year term. I actually had an ethics complaint filed against me by citizens because of my political beliefs that they knew and I had established for 39 years on a radio show. They thought I couldn't fairly represent the city as it's made up. Both politically and socioeconomically and racially. So they filed an ethics complaint that I had to sit through. They had to sit a panel. It made bad headlines. It made a bad look, and of course it was dismissed as a freedom of speech issue. They just plain said it has no merit, and off it went. But it doesn't mean you're not sitting uncomfortably for 45 days till it's decided. So that was from the political left as soon as I came in. Now, I haven't heard a word from them since. So I think they have seen that I fairly represent the people of Valdosta, and I'm very proud of the work we've done here.
So you predicted you were going to take heat. Did you take a lot of heat? Did you get a lot of criticism from friends and from constituents?
Oh, absolutely. And believe it or not, Julian Smith and I checked in on each other a day later and said, how are you holding up? She said it was about a 50-50 praise for having the courage to come out with somebody and not turning your back on somebody that supported the city, both financially and physically. I mean, the guy came down here and worked, for crying out loud. So we checked on it. It was since that time, though. I'm betting it's 75-25. The people that have stopped you in your neighborhood or stopped you at the mailbox and said, thank you for what you did. Thank you for coming out. It's a crazy world we live in. It took a lot of courage. So we've now garnished a lot of support. I got heat last night. I went to an Austin Scott fundraiser and a rally last night, and they gave me the business there. But I expected it. They probably didn't expect me to show, and I said that's the reason I'm going to be there.
Yeah, sometimes showing up right after something like that is the most important thing you can do. Did the congressman give you any heat himself?
He did. He didn't do it publicly when he was addressing the room, but he did on an aside. Yeah. He sure did.
Yeah. So was there a moment that really crystallized? You said it was over a 6-year period, but was there a moment where you can look back to and say, you know what, this has really cemented my decision to back Senator Ossoff?
I want to say probably an hour and a half of blue gloves on and serving hot meals for a line that went about 3 miles down Gil Harbin Boulevard and out onto the Madison Highway of people that had that level of need for a hot meal in their belly after Hurricane Helene. He was my first ride around during Idalia, and he was my first ride around in a time when we couldn't even navigate down power lines and down trees. I had laid out a route for his people. I couldn't honor that route, so we kind of, it was a wing and a prayer when he showed up in town. He got off I-75, pulled into the parking lot at Prince Automotive. We loaded in an SUV and we toured the town for about an hour. Took him to meet some citizens, and then we went over to the Second Harvest Food Bank and truly served for an hour and a half together. Put meals in windows, blue gloved it, and had we were serving the people in their biggest time of need, and that probably cemented it right there. That probably said it's something different.
Yeah, Mayor, I want to make it clear to our listeners too. Things weren't always necessarily hunky dory between you and the senator. You described that first meeting way back when, 6 years ago, as kind of standoffish.
He got prepped as to my politics before that first meeting. We launched our very first ever transit system April 27th of 2021. That was my campaign promise in 2019. It took a year and a half to work out all the regulatory arms and funding arms and 5307 grant streams and everything else. So he came down 3 weeks after we launched and let me ride him around for about 45 minutes. And it was a little quiet in that he wanted to see some areas of town. He wanted to see how the on-demand transit system worked. He fell in love with it. He did a press conference afterward, and then kind of a God thing happened. He got back up to DC and got placed on the Senate subcommittee on transit. And the only model he knew was the Valdosta model, but the only model he had actually experienced or lived. So we get sent video time and time again praising us and a very innovative model down in Valdosta, Georgia, and Valdosta's mayor thinking outside the box. And we kept getting video when he'd hit the Senate subcommittee floor, and we were very, very flattered by that. And again, maybe that started us down that road.
Yeah.
And a decent friendship ensued.
Do you see this as because of course Republicans do beyond your circle, but do you see this as a knock on Mike Collins, or does this have to do more with Ossoff than Collins?
Yeah, not at all. I think my ultimate dilemma would have been if Brian Kemp had stepped up to run. Brian Kemp's been a fantastic governor. I had a fantastic relationship with him for 8 years as Secretary of State. He would come in the studio, in the studio about 3 times a year for 8 years. So you get to know a guy. Yeah. And then I think, again, after watching him 8 years shine as governor through the toughest of times and through the toughest of criticism, if I think I'm taking heat, he took the most vile heat for a few stances during his term. So I admire him, and I would have had a dilemma between two very respected legislators. One is governor and one is senator. They've both been awesome.
I talk to Republicans all the time who still feel like that was a big mistake for the governor not to get in, seeing him as the only candidate who could really give Ossoff the most formidable challenge. Do you still see a path for someone like Mike? I know you've endorsed Ossoff, obviously, but you still see a path for Mike Collins to potentially win?
Yeah. I hate to say that. I'll take more heat for this. I do not. I absolutely do not. I think it's only about margin now.
Yeah. And so when you're looking at, and I know we'll get a little bit more into this deeper in the conversation, but when you're looking at margin, and if Ossoff, can win by X amount, do you see, you've also endorsed Republicans down the ballot, including governor candidate Rick Jackson and others. Is there a chance for them if Ossoff wins by +5 points or something?
So I would hate for him to carry it down ballot, because Tim Fleming is a fantastic candidate for Secretary of State. He and his wife are just 2 exceptional people. They have Valdosta ties and BSU ties as well. Great support down here. Barbara Rivera Holmes, I couldn't be more impressed with her as the labor commissioner as well. And Tyler Harper, I mean, come on. That guy's next level. He should be on the national level. Here, I'll take a shot at Tyler. If he was 6 inches taller, he'd be governor. He's just good.
He still might be a governor candidate one day.
Yeah, lifelong farmer as well. So from that point on down, and Rick Jackson has really shined. He came out of absolutely nowhere. I don't even have my first interview with him for another couple of weeks, and then he has his first visit here that I'm invited to in September. So no, I would hate that he carried that, and obviously that's part of what I'm being accused of helping that effort. But that's we are well served with a Republican state, and we have been well served by that Democratic governor or that Democratic senator. So I have no complaints of the last 6 years.
Yeah. So why and does that extend to Senator Warnock as well? I'm just curious.
Ask me again in 2 years.
But why do you think a sort of a split ticket leadership is so effective in a state like Georgia?
Well, I think the dream might be to have a Democrat and a Republican senator as well. So now I might have just answered your question 2 years from now. I think that balance matters when you're getting into the money line, and the conservative beliefs outside Atlanta lend itself to a Republican state. It's been working. It works well. We're compassionate people, so we work across the aisle with each other very well. I'm in the best position in the world. I get done to identify a problem and go about solving it. I don't ask anybody's political affiliations.
And you and Mayor Tifton Mayor Julie Smith, who also endorsed Senator Ossoff, and also a Republican, had some of the same message, right? That was the message. You don't ask your constituents what party they're in, you want to help them out. And then when you talked about Senator Ossoff, you said that there are politicians who call, and that's great, but there's also politicians who show up, and you kind of cast Ossoff in the bucket of the ones who show up.
He does. Absolutely. And by phone call, and by concern, and by, hey, guess what? Good news. We pulled some money out of the money tree. Those calls come early and often. Even while he was running, which I didn't care to use, I had his cell phone number. I didn't use it till a little ways down the line. As a matter of fact, the first call, I said, you made the mistake probably a year in when I had a need for the city. I said, you made the mistake of giving me your cell phone number. He said, no mistake. So again, if he had a plan, he executed it to perfection over 6 years and fooled me, but that's not the case.
Well, so given your ideology, given your conservative roots and beliefs, are there moments where you see him in Washington and just cringe at some of the votes? And talk about that, and talk about votes that you wish he hadn't made, and how you square that with your support for him now.
Yeah, or if he takes to criticizing a sitting president or an action, sometimes, yes, I think he probably fully realizes that too. We're not aligned on a lot of things, and when he does pull a vote like that, I cringe and say, I wish, but guess what? That's not me. I think I always said about somebody criticizing me, I said, if you thought like me, acted like me, you would be me. That's just kind of the world of politics, though. You can do great work. You can put in a body of work that you're proud of, and then you stub a toe and they call you a bum and say, let's vote him out. So it's an odd world we live in.
Yeah. I mean, going from sort of conservative commentator to politician must have been quite the journey, because you were the one on the other side of that microphone criticizing leaders, I'm sure, for years. And now you're the one getting some of the criticism, at least.
Yeah. And I think Shane, your producer, will tell you, he knows where I was born and raised in Cocoa Beach. So the long-haired hippie in me comes out every once in a while from back in the surfing days.
Yeah. Those days are gone. But well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Mayor Matheson about the future of the Republican Party, the trajectory heading into 2026, and really heading into 2028. This is Politically Georgia from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Well, Mayor Scott James Matheson is still a Republican, and that makes his decision to back Jon Ossoff an interesting window into a larger debate inside the GOP. What does being a conservative mean in 2026? Is the party focused on the issues that matter most to voters? And can Republicans navigate Donald Trump without allowing loyalty to one person to become the defining test of the party? Well, Mayor Matheson, you call yourself a hardcore conservative. What does that mean to you in this era?
Golly. I hope to show us a better way. I think the senator and I might be showing us a little bit better way. We can have our differences and still coexist. And I think all the mayors that I get to work with, I'm honored to work with across the state, agree. There is a better way, and it's from the ground up. We serve our constituents. We don't refuse anybody. assistance or service or a hard look at a problem because of their political affiliation. Matter of fact, that ends most conversations. So I think as we talk amongst them, believe it or not, there's other mayors in the state that like the work the senator's doing, but I guess they chose to not come out. I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant. I like what I do. I enjoy what I do. I'm honored to continue to do it. And the fact that people want you to do it is just even more of a.
What are the issues that local governments, and particularly in South Georgia, but really all over the state, are facing that aren't getting nearly as much attention, not just in Washington, but of course in state government in Atlanta?
Yeah, it's what this entire political cycle is all about, and what the midterms and 2028 will be all about. It's a very expensive walk through life right now for our citizens. So I think people have long since tapped out savings. And when you go through a couple of hurricanes, I promised the bank had been emptied out to repair homes and cars and everything else. So I think people wake up and they're deferring auto repair, they're deferring home repair, they're deferring so much in life because just the power bill is a $500 nut every month. That used to be a pretty decent mortgage. Gas to fill up is an $80 fill up on it. And we're just feeling that. Every one of us are feeling a $200 trip to the grocery store. So I think that remains the focus. We can talk housing, we can talk homelessness, we can talk 1,000 other things that we deal with or have to deal with in a better way. But holy mess, just the walk through life. And listen, mayor pays a whopping $25,000. I still own my own radio stations. I still make a half a living from that, but the other half comes from very much money that doesn't exist. So you're a true public servant if you step into that role, I promise you. And a couple of the accusations from my endorsement about a sack of cash or getting rich, farthest from the truth.
Yeah.
So keep slinging the mud. It doesn't stick.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people always say that whenever there's an endorsement, Republican, Democrat, you name it, there's always, oh, what's he getting paid for? And, with very rare exceptions, absolutely nothing. This is where I want to ask you this question, because you mentioned the economy being on the forefront. And listen, I traveled the campaign trail all around the state. I was just in Rome and Columbus a few days ago. Of course, campaign events all over the northern part of the state. And economy and affordability are number one, right? We see Republicans and Democrats messaging to that. But at many Republican gatherings, I'm also hearing fighting about Sharia law and transgender bathrooms and socialism and communism. And look, I'm not saying this isn't an issue for some people, but it is coming up over and over again on the campaign trail as sort of red meat. Do you worry sometimes that Republicans aren't focused as much as they should be on pocketbook issues? Or do you just think that's your typical saber rattling, base energizing red meat sort of campaign rhetoric?
Yeah, so I hope they settle into that message and that solution as well. I think what they just did and what they did accomplish was fantastic. They said, hey, we're going to secure a border. We're going to, they attacked that and they did it. And then they exhaled. And I haven't seen a whole lot since. They should have jumped right into the affordability problem. The war has had some effect on that, but golly, come on, guys. This is the American people screaming. This is left and right saying, I'm having a tough time navigating just life. You do that and for enough years and you'll show up at maybe retirement's doorstep and everything's empty. So you'll have a new crisis on your hands. And I think we might be heading there. So yeah, I'm a little frustrated. We haven't picked up on the outcry. It's been very loud and it's been very long. If we address that, we're fine. But here's my other political analysis. After the primaries, when we were in March and April, and I think the Democrats are poised for an easy downhill ride to November, and they've shot themselves in the foot with the Democratic Socialist movement, with the elections, with now 1/3 of them identifying in that bent. You're pulling defeat from the jaws of victory, and I'm watching it happen, and I guess I'm smiling at that because I didn't have an answer. I didn't have an answer to what was happening in the early primaries, and now they've answered it for me. nobody can relate to that new mindset of dismantling the Constitution, of dismantling the Senate, and some of the things they're now taking on as a platform. It's just insanity.
Well, I want to ask you about that because Republicans have long, cast Democrats as socialists or communists, you name it, right?
Now they're self-identifying.
And now there are some DSA candidates, in places, especially up north, but there are a handful in Georgia. Why do you think that's such an effective argument for Republicans to make right now? Is casting, even more mainstream candidate? Look, Mike Collins, he's out there on social media and on the campaign trail every day, characterizing Jon Ossoff as a socialist.
So I don't think John falls into that category. I think there's others that are truly out there self-identifying. So stop trying to identify them. They're wearing that badge proudly right now. I don't understand that. I guess they fully believe that that's the way the country should go, and that's just, again, insanity. For 250 years we've been the most amazing experiment, and we've been a beacon to the rest of the world, and we've helped when others won't, and we're just it's an amazing thing if we can work together instead of trying to dismantle it. I think we just built something. We've built something very special. We really have.
So you own a radio stations. You're a conservative commentator before you became a mayor. And I'm sure over the years you've also waged some of those culture wars, that really energize a lot of listeners and of course voters too. Do you think it's worth keep fighting those battles, or right now when the economy is such a big issue for so many voters, the focus should shift?
So it has changed, but again, on the local level, they're still wearing each other out with the same tired arguments and digging their heels in the sand, and we're down here doing the work. Occasionally they think it's a good idea and they help fund it, or they throw us some money to help, or there's grant funding opportunities to move that work if we're inclined to do so. We're not inclined to put in the rest of the time and effort. But we're addressing stuff like affordable housing down here. I addressed transit, the ability just to get to work, have access to health care, and the age-old discussion of food deserts. When you can't get there, you can't get there. So we're doing that kind of work at the local level. We like to hold it up as the way to go, and the rest of the world seems to slightly ignore and go back to some of the tired name calling. And I hope there's a groundswell of all of us down here that are getting a little sick of it. I think you probably see it. You probably shake your head at times when they're wearing out an old talking point. So
yeah, what do you hope people in Atlanta and Washington look at and see in Valdosta, what you guys are doing right?
Oh, wow. Just friends and neighbors helping friends and neighbors. I think we feel that if we could, what was the old saying? Trickle down what didn't work, so we'll try trickle up. If friends and neighbors keep working together and solving problems and showing compassion, and golly, what are we about to open up? We're about to cut the ribbon on our first warming, cooling, and storm shelter. All became very necessary in the deep South down here and after our hurricanes. So we're going to cut the ribbon on that. And then wait till you see that mixed bag group that's going to show up for that just major celebration. And listen, I'll tell you the other way it's supposed to work. Rather than say, yeah, anything could be done for a couple $100,000. Every one of our employees with the city of Valdosta brought a skill to that. Some put in brand new bathroom fixtures. Some built the walls to separate the kitchen from the main hall, the shelter hall. Some brought their wiring experience to the project. So we did this amazing project for $32,000.
Wow.
We're very proud of that, and I'm going to highlight all those employees and the work that they did together for this shelter and for a need that the city has. So it'll be quite a celebration, and maybe if you put a camera on that gathering, you're going to see the way things should be.
Well, we want to let you go to prepare for that celebration. One last question. You've been a supporter of President Trump over the years too. You've also criticized some of his policies, but supported many of his other policies. What do you think the GOP needs to be in Georgia and really beyond after Trump leaves office? Where do you see the party going?
I'm sleeping well at night about that. I think everybody thought that J.D. Vance was going to be the heir apparent, and Trump was walking him right through. He had a nice visit here too. J.D. Vance had a nice visit here. Let me tell you who has outshined him, and I think is our candidate for 2028. Marco Rubio has been knocking it out of the park time and time again. J.D. stubs a toe on occasion, and Marco has proved to be all that and more. So I'm very fine. That is my candidate for 2028. I'm excited about him as well. And maybe he's going to be facing the guy that I'm now taking heat for as well, because I think he is a fresh approach as well.
Do you think Senator Ossoff will run for president?
I think he hasn't even asked, and all of a sudden he's a 10%er.
Yeah.
I think at last I saw, Buttigieg was 19, AOC was 18, Gavin Newsom was 12, and John showed up at 10, and he's never once asked. So I would believe that right now there's a groundswell for some across the board action thinking, and just about every press release I ever get from him says, in true nonpartisan fashion, we worked X. So maybe that is a better way. We're showing him a better way.
Well, Mayor Matheson, thank you so much for joining Politically Georgia. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Greg, I appreciate your time and appreciate your interest and sympathy as well.
Well, before we go, a quick thank you to everyone who subscribes to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Your support helps make Politically Georgia possible. And if you're not a subscriber yet, you can join us at ajc.com/start for full access to our political reporting, our newsletters, our exclusive subscriber events. That's ajc.com/start. That's going to do it for today's edition of the show. If you found us on YouTube, welcome to our brand new channel, and please click the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We'll talk to you next time on Politically Georgia from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Thanks for listening to the Politically Georgia podcast. Our executive producer is Shane Backler. AJC's head of audio is Sam Stamler. Production support from our partners at Goat Rodeo, including Kara Schillen, Hazel Hoffman, and Max Johnston. For more of our political coverage, visit ajc.com/politicallygeorgia, and we invite you to support local journalism by subscribing to the AJC. Join us again next time on the Politically Georgia podcast from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.